So our guest today is Dr. Gordon Freeman from Hofer, Saskatchewan. Dr. Freeman obtained an MA from the University of Saskatchewan, a PhD from McGill University, and a Doctor of Philosophy from Oxford. So you have two doctorates. Is that right?
Yeah, well, the guy I want to work for in Oxford said he wouldn't take postdocs because they're not serious people. He only
Oh,
takes graduate students. And so I thought, what the hell? Got two theses already. What's another one?
there you go. Fair deal. Okay, and the two they're in. Sorry. The PhD is from McGill is in.
Well, they're all in physical chemistry, but
Okay.
different fields.
Okay, fair enough. So he's a chemical physicist and worked at the University of Alberta for a better part of 5 decades, I guess. He was chairman of the physical and theoretical chemistry for 10 years, the director of the Radiation Research Center for 30, and is now a professor emeritus. So, Dr. Freeman, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess I kind of wanted to get started because it was even before I read the book, it was something that I had a question about. So you're a chemical physicist, but how did you get into archaeology and archaeoastronomy? What led you to take a look at that?
Well, my father was a CPR station agent in Saskatchewan, and in the 30s, the dry wind was blowing tilled soil away.
Okay.
And so sometimes he'd take us out on a Sunday afternoon in the summer and look for stones on the heart pan,
Right.
the clay heart pan, and sometimes we'd find arrowheads or scrapers or stone knives. And eventually I inherited a third of his collection.
Oh wow. Okay.
And then I started to wonder about them. And I started to pester geologists about the stones and archaeologists about the tools. And after some time, they got tired of me. And they said, hey, do you know Jim McGregor? Jim McGregor has a fantastic collection. So that diverted me to Jim McGregor. But when he got tired of me, he said, hey, Gord, I bet I know a bunch of places that you and Phil would love to see.
Okay.
And he drew us a map of 15 places in southern and eastern Alberta,
Yeah.
a long way from Edmonton.
Okay. Yeah.
And we drove 4,500 kilometers in 8 days, photographed all those 15 places, 2 more that farmers showed us along the way.
Yeah.
And everything seemed more or less okay according to what archaeologists and Jim had said, except this one place.
Okay.
And there was stuff there were patterns of stones on the side of the hill. So all my photographs from 1980 from that place are from the side of the hill looking up. I don't have a picture of the actual the medicine wheel itself.
Okay. So this is at Majorville, right? Like
This
that's
is Majorville, yeah.
right.
And I
Okay.
asked the archaeologist to show them the photographs. I said, what are all these other stones?
Yeah.
And he said, the only stones moved by man were in the medicine wheel.
Okay.
Everything else is where the glacier dropped them when it melted 10,000 years ago. And I
Okay.
thought, well,
That you said that doesn't make a lot of sense.
no, because the patterns were too intricate.
Right.
And so I thought I'd study it myself.
Okay.
I thought we'd clean it up in about 3-4 years. 35 years later, I'm still making discoveries.
Wow. So just going back here for a second, Gord. So how come you didn't become an archaeologist or an anthropologist? Just out of curiosity, it seems like you had an interest at a young age. Like, was there a reason that
Well,
you went the chemical
yeah,
physicist
but
route?
that's kind of, well, I don't know who's, well, anyway, I'll say it. Archaeologists aren't the top scholars that I know. They like to protect their ass. A good scholar will accept information no matter where it comes from,
Right.
and he'll check it out.
Right.
Archaeologists love to teach.
Yeah.
They taught me a lot. But any information coming from me to them,
Yeah.
they just reject.
Okay.
They say I don't have standing.
So it's an ego thing for them, you're saying
Oh,
then?
they're protecting their territory. Good people don't do that.
Okay. Well, fair deal. So you found Majorville then from but you did find one from an archaeologist, like they pointed you in the right direction, is that right? Somebody at the U
Well,
of A
Jim McGregor was a retired electrical engineer.
Oh, okay.
All the really new discoveries are made by dedicated amateurs, not by the pros.
Okay. Fair deal. So what did you find, Gordon? What did you find when you got to Majorville?
Well, the medicine wheel really was on the top of the hill,
Yeah.
and it was intricate, about 50 tons of stones in the middle, 10 meters across, 9 meters,
Okay.
and a ring about 28 meters across, with 28 lines of stones joining the cairn to the ring.
Mm-hmm.
But down the hillside, roughly at right angles to each other, were other complex bits of, gatherings of stones.
Sure.
And farm fences nearly always go northeast, north, south, or east, west.
Right.
And there was a fence actually cutting across part of the medicine wheel.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, well, that's probably north-south.
Okay.
And so the rocks would have pointed to the summer solstice sunrise and summer solstice sunset,
Mm-hmm.
and the winter solstice sunset, but nothing for the winter sunrise.
Okay.
Anyway, we were studying glyph rocks. I mean, these other 14 sites were a lot of what they call ribstones.
Okay.
They're not ribstones, but anyway, that's what they call them. So the next year, that's where we went. But 2 years later, we went back with a compass.
Okay.
And the fence was actually going parallel to the river. And so it was going northeast, southwest.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so that meant that these rock piles were in the cardinal direction.
Okay. So then
And I thought that the cardinal directions would be harder to determine than the solstice rises and sets.
Okay.
So I thought, holy smoke, if they can do the cardinal directions,
Yeah.
I wonder if they did the solstices too.
And
that led to the calendar, because in fact then we did find the stone alignments going to all those rises and sets.
And so the medicine wheel. So when you found it, when you were pointed in the direction of it, like what were did archaeologists really, did they pay much attention to it, or did they date it? Like did they give it sort of an idea? Okay.
They ripped it apart. 60% of the stone pile, the cairn, they ripped apart in 1971.
Oh, wow, okay.
That was Dick Borbis and Jim Calder, his graduate student.
Okay.
And they found 8 layers of stone separated by 7 layers of dirt, and they found a lot of artifacts. And bottom layers had the oldest ones.
Okay.
And the oldest ones were oxbow.
Okay.
And those arrowheads are dated from, campfire remains.
Right. From the carbon, from the...
Carbon from the burnt wood.
Okay.
And so they dated from 5,000 to 4,000 years ago.
Okay. So that time frame was, it was, I guess this is jumping ahead a little bit, because in the book you're talking about 5,000, 5,300 years ago, so they had figured that was about 5,000 years ago when you came across it then, eh?
Yeah, 5,000 to 4,000, because all the oxbow artifacts aren't the same date.
Okay. So it's been the site's been in continuous
but
use.
It was as old as 5,000.
Okay. Okay.
But then from the lines, the solstice rises and sets. It's actually dated to 5,200 years.
Wow. So, what? I mean, is there anything else sort of in of this scale? I mean, in the area that is traditionally dated back that far? Is this an anomaly, or is this
No,
no?
no. There are spear points that are 10, 12,000 years old.
Okay. So this.
So this is the oldest calendar
Mhm.
still exists that you can still read
Okay.
ever discovered in the world.
Wow. So and you made the connection that this was a calendar, right? That this, like, nobody had really looked at it that way before, had they?
They still don't believe it. They think I'm a crackpot.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but 3 years ago was the last time. I used to give talks at archaeology, the National Archaeology Conferences. And
Okay.
the last one I went to was in Nova Scotia.
Right.
And archaeologists read their papers for 20 minutes. They're afraid of questions. You're allowed at 20 minutes each.
Okay.
And so I always say, I want to stop at 15 so that I have 5 minutes for questions.
Right.
So I ask for a warning at 10 minutes, and then I'll ramp down to where I want to get and by 15.
Okay.
And there's always 5 minutes of, they would go on, but the time limit is 5 minutes.
Okay.
So the last question was by a dedicated amateur. He was the president of the local section of the Nova Scotia Archaeology Society.
Okay.
And he invited me to give the keynote address to their annual meeting the next day.
Okay.
And so anyway, he put his hand up and he said, "Does any professional archaeologist believe what you're saying?" And I said, "No, but that's okay, because they're going to die." And the kids just love this stuff. And all the giggles from the students. The students in the room would giggle.
What's the issue? What is it? Why is this so hard to believe? I mean, I read the book, and I'm looking at the documentation that you've made, the measurements that you've made. What's the issue? Why is there so much pushback on this to believe that, these people had created a calendar 5,300 years ago? What's the problem with that?
Archaeologists, although to be politically correct, they have to treat Indians as equals.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, they still treat Indians as living fossils.
Mm.
They don't accept that somebody who talks English like that can be a genius.
Okay.
So they're just not very good scholars, that's all.
Fair deal. So walk me through this. So you came to the site and you saw that there was the medicine wheel, and then there was the other markers, and you kind of dismissed it outright, from what I'm hearing, the idea that the glaciers had just moved these rocks there. So how did you put it all together? Like, how did you put this all together to realize that this was actually a calendar that's a highly sophisticated and the world's oldest calendar?
Well, when I first guessed that these rocks, because of the fence, I had the wrong direction for that.
Right.
I thought the rocks would have, my father liked the moon and the sun, so I had a little bit of interest in this moving north and south.
Sure.
And so I guessed that these rocks out 50 to 70 meters away from the stone pile
mm-hmm.
marked the solstice rise and set directions.
Okay.
But then when I saw that with a compass, the fence was going northeast, southwest, mm-hmm. then these things had to be the cardinal directions.
Right.
Well, you can easily get the north because of the North Star.
Right, yeah.
But how do you get east and west?
Right.
So something going on there. And so I actually looked for the solstice rise and sets.
Okay.
I found them fairly easily.
Right.
But then when I went for the equinox rise and set, I didn't find them at all.
Oh, okay.
No, because because of the weather and cloudiness and so on, I had rises and sets on a scatter of days on both sides of the March and September equinoxes, the calendar equinox.
Right.
And I found accurate rock alignments 3 days before the March one.
Okay.
And 3 days after the September equinox. Well, that's symmetry.
Right.
So it's probably meaningful.
Right.
So I went to the library and got the U.S. Naval Observatory Almanac. And by damn, on March the 17th, on that particular year, the length of daylight and of night were exactly 12.00 hours.
Okay.
And the same from September 25th to 26th. That day and night were 12.00 hours long. So that means that the calendar marked equinox is 3 days out.
Okay.
And I had to find out why.
Right.
And Gregory XIII in 1582 fixed a long-standing problem, because by 1582, the folks were using Julian calendars in those days.
Right, yeah.
And the Julian calendar was 13 days out of whack.
Right.
And so the sailors, the Portuguese sailors, have been going south of the equator since, in the 15th century, from 1470 and so.
Right.
And sailors navigate by the stars and the sun.
Right.
And so they would know that the real equal day night is latitude dependent.
Right.
And so it's about a week later down in South Africa.
Okay, yeah.
And so Easter, which is the Sunday after the full moon, after the equinox.
Yeah.
If the equinox is latitude dependent, so is Easter.
So is Easter, yeah. Okay.
And so Jesus resurrected only once. So you got to celebrate his resurrection on the same day everywhere on earth.
Right.
And that's why every European dictionary and the American ones say that equinox is when the day and night are of equal length everywhere on earth.
Right.
And that's March 21 and September 22.
Mm.
And there is no place on earth where the day and night are equal on those dates.
On those days, yeah. They just, okay. So
Gregory, to get rid of the latitude problem, he picked the date when the sun is above the equator. But there's never an equal day and night on the equator. Never.
Okay.
So he kept the same name. He changed the definition.
Right.
But kept the same word.
Kept the same name. Yeah.
Maybe to make the Pope infallible.
Right. Maybe. Well, and the Roman Catholic Church has a habit of that, right? They'll keep the name or something close to it, or they'll keep or the other way around, I guess. They'll keep a particular day, but maybe change the name or meaning around. So there's a long history and tradition of that. So when you looked at this, when you looked at the equinox and the solstice, I guess the equinox, then so where was it misaligned for where it was supposed to be, or was it pretty precise, or did you need to sort? Is this where you kind of get the dating?
Sorry, the equal day night doesn't shift with time,
right,
because the tilt of the Earth, the axis, the spinning axis, is perpendicular to the sun at the equal day night.
Right. Okay.
So that's the same now as it was 10,000 years ago.
Okay.
But the tilt is slowly decreasing relative to the orbit of the Earth around the sun.
Right.
And that shifts the rise and set points at the solstice
Okay.
the summer and winter,
Yeah.
slowly.
Right.
And so between now and 5,000 years ago, the direction has changed by 1.1 degrees.
Okay.
That might not seem a lot, but these lines are accurate to 1/20th of a degree.
Wow. That precise. So
They shifted those lines every 400 years or so.
wow. So I was gonna say then, how did you use that to recalculate the date then of 5,300 years? Is that sort of the
Exactly.
basis? Yeah. Okay. I was just
Because the line, you see, you can't, the Islamic religion, the Muslims, they can't destroy a Quran.
right.
You can't burn it or throw it in the junk. You have to keep it, and because it's a sacred thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the stones that mark the lines were similarly sacred.
Okay.
And so they never shifted the stone; they put another one down.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
you can follow it.
Right. So it's it's kind of a progressive calendar down through the ages then,
Yeah, and the last adjustment for the lines that we found maybe 36. Lots of different societies have gone there in 5,000 years.
Sure.
But the last one was adjusted between 200 and 300 years ago.
Okay. So you established it as a hyper accurate calendar, and really the oldest calendar in the world. How did you get to the connection with Stonehenge?
Well, when we had found the equal day night,
Right.
and it wasn't the equinox, we heard that there was an argument going on whether Stonehenge contains a calendar.
Okay.
Only one accurate measurement was ever made in 1901 by a dedicated amateur,
Okay.
not by an archaeologist.
Not by an not by a credentialed professional archaeologist. Okay.
And he did an accurate recording of the summer solstice sunrise through the circle.
Okay.
And for the last 50 years, going back to 1960 or so,
Right.
An astronomer published a book just using maps and computer calculations, saying that there's a whole calendar there.
Okay.
All his lines are wrong, but the point was he suggested there was a complete yearly calendar.
Okay.
And that raised the ire of the archaeologists. And so they've been denying it ever since. They're still denying it.
Yeah.
So I thought, I read all the papers in the books, and if there were a calendar, they never looked at it right. Nobody ever looked at it right.
Okay.
Not even the guy in 1901.
Okay.
He made a good guess, but it wasn't the right line quite.
Okay.
But so we thought if they'd never looked at it right, I'll go over there and look at it right.
Fair deal. Okay.
Using the technique I developed here.
Right.
So in 1989, I was going to a conference in North England,
Mm-hmm.
and I booked time to get into Stonehenge by myself.
Okay.
If you pay them a lot of money and sign away your life, you could get in before the tourists or after the tourists and have the whole place to yourself.
Gotcha. Wow. Still?
So I went in April 1989
Okay.
looking for a 1 kilometer long line.
Right.
The circle is only 30 meters across, so that's not big enough. If you're standing in the middle, you're looking 15 meters through a great big wide space between those stones.
Right.
I thought you've got to stand outside the circle and look through the cracks
Yeah.
of the whole thing, and preferably have a foresight a kilometer away.
Okay.
Well, I was in the circle. I was in the grounds about 3 minutes before I found the winter solstice sunset line.
3 minutes.
900 meters long.
Wow.
And so all the hype back in '89 was for the summer solstice sunrise. Nobody mentioned the winter sunset then.
Okay.
And now, I mean, in 2014,
Yeah.
they accept that both the winter solstice sunset and the summer sunrise are marked by, they think, the same line, but actually the lines are different by 3 degrees.
Oh.
So
Okay.
they think, well, 3 degrees, that's close enough.
Okay.
But the lines are accurate to a 20th of a degree.
Well, so the same degree
So
of accuracy.
3 degrees is a hell of a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So it was you that found this then. So did you? So I'm assuming you presented your findings to people in
sure.
England then, yeah.
Oh, everywhere.
And what did they
And
say?
I have submitted papers to archaeology journals in Canada, United States, England.
Yeah.
Oh, about 10 different journals.
Mm.
All of them rejected.
Wow.
And I presented it at an international conference in Ireland in 1998. You'd think someone would have woke up by then, but anyway.
Still turf wars going on.
Yeah, mine was the only paper that was rejected.
So I'm just curious about this because you're not the first person that I've heard that has has the opinion about archaeologists. What is the actual criticism that they throw at you? Like, what are they? Do they give you any technical or no? Okay.
Actually, the students. I mean, when the first edition Canada Stone came out, it had a great press. I mean, they had full newspaper pages, reviews from coast. I was sent papers from Halifax, from Victoria, all across the country. Wow. Enormous treatment. Except, Calgary also.
Okay.
2 pages of the Herald.
Of the Herald, wow.
Not a printed word in Edmonton.
Really?
Not printed. No.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the old thing about the philosopher in his own country.
I guess so, anyway, right? Yeah.
the student newspaper at the university decided to change it.
Okay.
And so they interviewed me, and they interviewed the professor of Plains archaeologist, Jack Ive, who used to be a government archaeologist.
Right.
And he came out to see us one time.
Yeah.
With Jack Brink.
Okay.
No, with Bill Burt, the boss man.
Okay.
Anyway, when they interviewed him, they asked Jack Ives, "Have you read Freeman's book?" And he said, "No, but I know Freeman."
Okay.
And so he panned it.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing.
You don't have to read it. It's not amazing. You find these kinds of all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, they're not very good.
Yeah. Well, so they don't actually, they just kind of poo-poo it. They don't actually look at the research then. So
I've never read it.
Okay. Oh, that's wild.
Well, an anthropologist,
an
anthropologist, not an archaeologist, an anthropologist who has studied the Blackfeet in Montana for 40 years.
Yeah.
That's the Alice Kehoe. On the back, you'll see a comment by her on the back of the book.
Right.
She's one of my greatest fans.
Okay.
But she's an anthropologist. She's not in competition with me.
Fair enough. Okay. So she's not protecting turf. So that's wild. So Gordon, I guess so we're looking at this, both of them, Stonehenge and also Majorville, and realizing that they have that hyper accurate calendar from 5,300 years ago.
And Stonehenge is younger.
And Stonehenge is younger than that.
About 44.
44. Okay, so Majorville is almost 1,000 years older.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it didn't spring up out of nowhere. I mean, clearly this level of sophistication is not something that somebody dreamt up overnight. I mean, this had to be done by hundreds, over hundreds, and if not thousands of years
Oh, observation, yeah.
So what's your take on that? And I guess what are there larger implications for human history when we look at it that way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know whether this was separately discovered, but if you don't have street lights, the sky is alive.
Right.
And there are nerds everywhere, and there have always been nerds. 50, 60,000 years there have been nerds. And so a nerd doesn't care about if it's useful.
Right.
He just wants to pick at it until he has some understanding.
Right. Yeah.
So nerds around the world, I'm sure, have just studied the sky because it's alive.
Right.
And so I suspect, in fact, in the book, I said you should look in Kazakhstan on 51 latitude, and maybe you'll find another one of these.
Okay. Because that's the other thing is, right, Majorville and Stonehenge, you'd mentioned this in the book, they're at the same latitude, right?
Yeah,
I mean, this
51.
Is 51.
That's where once in the 18.6-year lunar cycle,
Yeah.
the sun rises and and the moon rises and sets at the solstices are at right angle.
Okay.
Now, the right angle is a sacred angle everywhere on Earth because it's the straight up and, say, the surface of water.
Mm-hmm.
And if a big stone isn't standing straight up, it'll follow it.
Right.
So they had to know what a right angle was to make
Right.
something stand up,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's a post or a stone.
A poster or stone. So, I guess, are there any signs? Like, are there any, I guess, any signposts along the way where we could say somebody, before this date was looking at this sophistication, or is this just, it just kind of pops out of nowhere, but there's no, I don't know what the word would be, but there's no precursor to it. Like nobody tried a medicine wheel, 50 feet over and, got it kind of right, but not.
There must be.
Okay.
Because at this particular site, I mean, they might have started that 6,000 years ago. I don't know.
Okay.
Probably hundreds of years before 5200, though.
Right.
Because they probably made it more and more accurate at the same place.
Right.
But I think you're right that the middle of the United States place that should be a place that's not quite right.
Right.
In different places.
Okay. Well, I kind of got an off the wall question for you here, but it's something that it's kind of been an interest of mine because I do follow a little bit in terms of anomalous archaeology and that sort of thing. Any argument? I guess there's probably no evidence there, and probably neither at Stonehenge, but any potential for a common source for where they got this knowledge from?
Sky.
The sky? I guess that's common enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's nothing in here that's I mean, and you don't suggest anything in your book, obviously, but in terms of sort of a common source where somebody figured out the mathematics or anything like that, or to even look at the sky, and then it kind of got diffused out.
You don't need complex mathematics. All you got to do is watch the sky and put a line on the ground toward that thing rises and sets, because the rise and set is a point on the horizon.
Yeah.
It's not the orb sitting on the horizon.
Right.
It's the first and last flashes.
Fair enough.
That's a point.
So you just need patience, not math.
Yeah, you need patience. You need to be a nerd. You gotta have the stick-to-itiveness to do this for all of your life.
Yeah. Well, and
then,
so
there's always a kid nerd comes along and grabs onto an old nerd. So you pass that on from generation to generation.
Right. Yeah, sort of internally. And I mean it's all around the world too, right? I mean Mesoamerica. I mean I was down in Chichen Itza last year, and the highly accurate and detailed work they did, and all over the world, right?
The calendar down there though is a tropical calendar, and we have a temperate zone calendar. They're not the same.
Okay. What's the difference?
Well, we mark the north and south extremes and the equal day night. They mark when the sun is straight up.
Okay.
they also mark the extremes,
Right.
but relative to when it's straight up.
Okay. So, where do you go from here? Are you? I mean, have you stopped looking at the site, or are you doing more work, or?
I'm going there tomorrow. No, I shouldn't say that, should I? Anyway, I might not go there tomorrow.
Okay.
I've got 12,000 photographs of the place,
Right.
and I'm writing an enormous archival report,
Okay.
1,000 or more pages, and it won't have the stories in it that the book has. This is just for the nerds.
Right. Just the technical details.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it'll have more than 10 times the amount of information about the Majorville site than the book does.
Okay.
And it'll be printed in 5 volumes.
Oh wow.
The first 4 volumes are already in the rare books collection at the University Library.
Okay. Yeah.
And the University Archives will have all the photographs, all the manuscripts,
Yeah.
all the what they call fonds.
Okay. So.
And when I'm writing the 5th volume now, that'll take me the rest of my life.
Okay.
A very detailed description of the site as a whole. All the calendar stuff is already in the rare books collection.
Okay.
And I might give a copy to Glenbow if they want.
Okay.
And the fine description will be the 5th volume.
Okay.
And I don't know how soon that will go. But as long as I'm alive, I'll still be getting new information from these photographs. Sometimes when I make a discovery in a photograph,
Yeah.
there's nobody to talk to because I'm a chemist. So I just have to get up and pace the halls. I just can't sit anymore.
Okay. What talking about you're talking about giving the work to the Glenbow and they're in the rare archives at the U of A and they're also you're working on the 5th volume. What does the First Nations community around there say about your work? Because I know you've talked. You've had encounters. You talk about it in the book, but you've gotten to know the people there. What do they say about all of this?
Well, it says in the book, I've seen hate on the face of an Indian man, and I understand it.
Okay.
The whites have done such terrible, terrible things
Yeah.
over the last 200 years, slaughtered 90% of the Indians,
Yeah.
that they won't talk seriously to a white man about anything sacred to them.
Even if you build up a relationship that's gone on for 30, 35 years, like is that they still don't?
Well, this anthropologist, Alice Kehoe, has been doing it for like 45 years.
Wow.
And she's good friends with them.
Okay.
But the really deep stuff
Yeah.
is really sacred. And
Okay.
they've been hurt too much.
Fair enough.
But there's a possibility, because I've talked in obliquely. You can't ask them a question.
Right.
I mean, in the early days, I asked a question once, and it was offensive.
Oh, okay.
And I've been told by other people dealing with Indians wrongly that any question that you ask them, they will say yes.
Oh, okay.
No matter what question.
Right.
They'll be yes. So, in talking obliquely around this subject, I kind of think that the people the nerds who ran this thing for 5,000 years, died of a broken heart.
Okay.
I would have.
Why? Sorry, Gordon. Why do you say they died of a broken heart? What's
The white men destroyed it.
because they
The white men destroyed their culture.
Okay. Yeah. So.
And the people who think deeply,
Yeah.
the culture means a lot to them.
A lot. Yeah.
And they know that with the superior weapons and the increasing population, that they had no future.
Right.
So all this beautiful work would be destroyed,
Yeah.
and they just die.
There's a whole history of that in the discipline of archaeology, isn't it? I mean, archaeology 100 years ago was essentially just grave robbery. I mean, look at
Yeah,
the pyramids
yeah.
all around the world. It's just been that way. Did they say anything at all about the date?
Who?
Or the First Nations around there, or were they not even address the subject with you?
They tolerate me because they think I'm doing something
Yeah.
for them,
Okay.
but they won't talk about any detail.
Okay.
And the Blackfoot think that they were created here.
Okay.
I mean, there's none of this migration stuff.
Right. Right. Okay.
Oh, dates don't mean that.
Don't make Yeah, it's not important to them.
They
Okay.
talk about the old people
Right.
with no numbers.
Okay. Fair enough. So, you'd indicated in all of this that just sort of towards the end of the book that the Alberta government really has not stepped up to protect this site.
I should say not. But in Hidden Stonehenge, I
Yeah.
hope you read Hidden Stonehenge.
Yeah.
I give a map
Yeah.
of what should be protected.
Okay.
And maybe the next generation of archaeologists who won't have been taught in university
Mhm.
that Indians are dumb.
Right.
I mean, their minds might be well. All the giggles from those kids 3 years ago indicates that their minds are
Are open.
not closed yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that the next generation might
Yeah.
protect this.
Well, and I mean, really looking at some of the stuff that's come out. I mean, recently about Stonehenge, in terms of looking at it a little bit different and recognizing that it's, because there was a story not too long ago about some glyphs on the ground and that sort of thing, but also like sites I'm noticing around the world, there's different sites around the world. People 15, 20 years ago in the archaeological profession, they would just dismiss any notion that, some of these sites may be far older and far more mysterious than, anybody had ever thought. And now there's this, I don't know, it seems to be a bit of a dawning, sort of an opening up in terms of the discipline that maybe the up and coming generation of archaeologists isn't going to be as ego driven, that they're actually willing to look.
Oh, they're ego driven, but the word's getting around. I've been preaching to archaeologists since 1983
Yeah.
that if you are standing on a feature,
Yeah.
the whole landscape, 360 degrees around the horizon, between you and the horizon, the whole landscape is part of that feature you're standing on.
Right. Yeah. It's a holistic thing. It's not just one piece.
They laughed or chuckled or asked me what they thought was embarrassing questions when I'd say this, but I always answered them. And after 3 years, when I was announced to get up and talk, they would just get up and walk out.
Seriously.
Yeah, that's the way they go. But I'm encouraged that there was a guy in University College London, an archaeologist, who wrote a book, 15, 20 years ago, that was saying that you've got to analyze the whole the landscape that you can see from that place.
Right.
And now they're actually doing that around the last 8 years, maybe.
Yeah.
They're actually doing that around Stonehenge.
Okay.
And that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
But these guys are fighting so much for press coverage that when one guy says it's a healing center, that was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Darville and Wainwright. Now this guy, Mike Parker Pearson, he says, no, it's not healing at all. It's a burial ground. They keep trashing each other. And news is entertainment.
Right.
because when I went there first, when I had to retire at 65,
Yeah.
I had for the first time a free December
Right.
to go and look for the winter solstice rise and set. When I got to Stonehenge, there was a BBC TV crew waiting for me. I didn't know who told them. But anyway, they were there.
Okay.
And the boss man came up and said, I hear you have a new theory about Stonehenge. I said, I gathered accurate data. And when you have enough accurate data, sometimes a theory suggests itself.
Right.
So he just walked away. Theories are speculative, and so that's BSable, and that's entertainment. So he's not interested in facts.
That's crazy. By chance, that wouldn't be BBC Horizon that did that, was it? The science program on BBC?
I have no idea.
Not sure who it was?
He just identified himself as BBC.
Okay.
But anyway, all these new studies that have come out in BBC TV and Guardian and the independent newspapers,
Yeah.
they have, I'd say, 10% of really nice new facts
Okay.
and 90% of BS.
Okay.
And the BS is what sells the papers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, which is unfortunate. Do you have a protege in all this, Gordon? Like, are you working with somebody to continue this?
I would like to have, but I mean, in fact, an archaeologist who's low on the totem pole here in Edmonton.
some MA student. Yeah.
He's the one who in 1990 said, "Hey, Gord, here's a platform. You should be talking to your archaeologist." And so that's when I started. We had the calendar all plotted out by 1990.
Right.
And so I've been talking. I talked with him, I think, for 3-4 conferences, annual conferences.
Okay.
But by the third one, I mean, the first conference, they thought they were nailing me with real tough questions.
Right.
And I answered them all.
Yeah.
Apparently successfully, acceptably. And the second year, they tried it again.
Yeah.
The third year, when I was called to go up and give my paper, they just got up. They expressed their opinion by leaving the room.
That's wild.
And after the fourth year, I just stopped going.
Yeah.
And then someone suggested about 6 years ago that I should go again.
Yeah.
And I did it for another 3 years.
Yeah.
And actually, at the conference in Ottawa,
Mm-hmm.
I gave 2 papers, one on Stonehenge and one on Major Hill.
Right.
And they were printing because it was the 50th anniversary of the Ontario Archaeological Society.
Okay.
These are dedicated amateurs.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, they were publishing this proceedings.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to submit because I'd had, I don't know, a couple dozen papers refused
Right.
by papers and proceedings and everything else.
Yeah.
But I was waiting, my wife and I were waiting in the foyer of a hotel for friends to pick us up.
Yeah.
We weren't going to the banquet.
Okay.
That was banquet night.
Right.
And this lady came up to me and she said, "Of course you're submitting your papers to the proceedings." And I said, "No, they don't like my stuff. I'm not wasting the time." She said, "I'm the editor. You submit it,
nice.
and they're in." And I said, "Well, those are only 2 20-minute talks. If I'm going to describe, these guys have never published any of my stuff, so it's got to be a lot longer than that." She said, "Make them as long as you want."
Serious? Okay.
And I said, "They got to be color photographs." She said, "Color, whatever you want.
Nice.
You submit them and they're in."
Free range. Yeah.
And by damn, I did that.
Yeah.
And a year later, because they published it on, another thing, they were going to put it in the archive, the Canadian archives,
Yeah.
electronically.
Okay.
And so I said, electronics isn't archival, so I'm not going to submit it.
Okay.
And so they arranged to have this put in the part of the archives that every time the technology changes, they will transfer this to the new technology.
Oh, wow.
So I did that.
Okay.
And the man who was running the computer stuff put a counter on it. So 1 year later, I asked, how many people have read my paper? And it was twice the average of everybody, all the other papers. Twice
Oh,
the
wow.
average.
So people
So they
are
don't like me much.
people are they're interested in this. This is
Well, the non-plains archaeologists, I guess, are interested.
okay. Any
They're not
other
in competition.
so I guess I mean there's so many theories that have come out about different places, over the years. I mean, and I know your specialty has been on Majorville and Stonehenge, but I mean, there's been a lot of work on archaeoastronomy in terms of all sorts of different things, redating, alignments around the pyramids, that sort of thing. I mean, in your opinion, I mean, I guess from the field, are people who are suggesting like at other monuments, and I guess I don't know, it depends how much you've looked at it, but I mean, are they really are they crackpots and really don't know what they're talking about, or are they crackpots that really do know what they're talking about and are just getting ignored and shut out?
The work that I read about the alignments for the pyramids are really good.
Okay. So they're just getting shut out because it doesn't fit into the mainstream theory then. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe archaeologists don't have an ability with numbers. I don't know. It says in my book, in big letters in the front, if you don't like numbers, just skip them and read the stories. Maybe that's what they'll do in another 20 years.
Yeah. So there's a whole underground, well, I guess it's the amateur archaeologists, right? I mean, that are really telling some good stories. It's not all stuff just to be faffed off.
Oh no, it was suggested by you asked me this a long time ago.
Yeah.
By an archaeologist low on the totem pole that I should get an archaeologist grad student. So I actually asked the head of the archaeology department if one might be available.
Yeah.
But of course, not.
Well, they can't willingly throw themselves to heresy. I mean, come on, Gordon. Let's.
Well, I mean, this was about 1990 when he told me I should be talking to their conferences.
Okay.
So he said you should also have a student.
Okay. Yeah.
But no go.
So
and I also applied to the Social Sciences Research Council for money to help me with all of this stuff. Because all that comes out of my pension.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is out of pocket. Okay.
Well, my wife said, you can't take it with you, so go ahead.
Follow the passion, right? So
anyway, I got the report back.
Yeah.
Top marks for the project, 0 money. And the head of the archaeology department, a lady here, was on the selection committee.
Oh, okay.
So I phoned her and said, how come I get top marks for the project, 0 money? She said, we can't get enough money for ourselves. We're sure not going to give any money to a chemist.
Nice. Again, inside baseball, right? Wow, that's wild. So, what would you like to see happen with this site? Like, what sort of protections would you like to see in place for Majorville? Like,
well, I'd like to have the archaeologists stop giving permission to drill holes in it.
Yeah.
In that 12 square miles.
Okay.
And it says in the book that if we can just keep the temperatures down, both the whites and the Indians, so that the information diffuses into the mind of everybody.
Right.
Maybe after 20, 30 years, everybody will be calm enough that the whites will realize that this is an Indian genius construction.
Yeah.
And it will be transferred to the control of Indians.
Of them, right.
Well, sooner or later it should be, because they built it and we are learning from it.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's the history of Imperial Europe, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everywhere Europeans went, they yeah,
Well, and now Imperial United States.
yeah. Well, I've heard, it's interesting because one of the people that I really enjoy who is an amateur, he's an amateur Egyptologist, and one that's really, he's come out with the help. And again, it's almost similar to you, Gordon, because I mean, he came out with an initial theory, which was then backed by a geologist. This is John Anthony West and Robert Schoch, who are doing work on the Sphinx. And it's almost an identical story to what you told me in terms of amateur versus professional archaeologist or Egyptologist, because Robert Schoch he's a PhD geologist, and the theory was, that the Sphinx is a lot older than they say it is because it has very clear signs of water erosion on it.
Yeah.
And and from a geology perspective, I mean, they presented that paper at a geology conference that basically said that, and just about every geologist there said, yeah, you're right. But then, of course, the Egyptologist blew a gasket because, it completely destroyed their theory. So I almost forgot where I'm going with that.
No, well, I've seen that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but it's almost, John Anthony West. I mean, he's been on the outside, but I guess has done some of the best work, and yeah, I guess it's just a matter of, I mean, nobody within any. Well, I mean, I guess you have is it Alice there? That's from the anthropology side of things. Anybody willing to look at it from anybody else willing to look at it from an anthropological perspective and publish it? Like, did Alice write anything about this, about your findings in any of her works? Present any of it in terms of anthropology?
No, she just read the book and really loved it.
Okay.
When I said that March the 17th was the equal day,
yeah,
she read that on March the 17th.
Okay.
And she said, I want to check. She got the newspaper, and by damn, it was right. So she was so excited, she phoned me.
Okay.
But she also told the scientific advisor of NOVA, you know that
right
PBS program?
Yeah, PBS, yeah.
That he should read my book and do a program on it.
Yeah, any
and
calls?
So she said, she told me to send him. She told me what she'd done.
Yeah.
Send him a book. And so I sent him a book. And about 6 months later, he just phoned to say, I'm an archaeologist. I'm an archaeologist.
I can't do anything with this. It's heresy. Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. He didn't send it back.
Just off on the side, Gordon. I mean, as any archaeologist said, without naming names here, hey, I think you're onto something here, but I can't really say it out loud.
No, because there's no incentive to say something like that. If he's a plains archaeologist, he's dead against it.
Okay.
But Indians who aren't local have phoned me about this book. And they're really excited about this possibility.
Okay.
But they won't talk details.
Yeah.
And, I don't ask details because I'm a white man.
Okay. Well, that's fair. And you don't want to offend. Yeah.
They have expressed excitement about this book.
Okay.
In fact, one of them stumbled on the book in the Heritage Park in Calgary.
Yeah.
He went home to a First Nation home.
Okay.
And read, he said the whole book, but I think just the Canada part.
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the morning, he sent me a 2-page email.
Yeah.
About this book, telling me his own experiences.
Okay.
And so it gives a charge to some full-blood Indian.
Okay.
The full-bloods are the only ones I talk with, because the half-bloods, the mixed-blood people, they don't really know who they are.
Fair enough. Okay. Okay. Well, Gordon, I'd like to thank you very much for being on the podcast today. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for doing it.